Hi class, today we're going to be looking at Chapter 4, Problem 3B. You should be able to see Cengage Chapter 3, Problem 4B. And in this problem, we're going to be calculating both the percentage method and the wage bracket method of federal tax withholding. And what you want to be sure of is to read your instructions carefully and to make sure that you use the correct tables. And the correct tables that we will be using for this is the 2020 federal income tax tables for manual systems with forms W-4 from 2020 or later with standard withholding. And the 2020 FICA rates have been used. We talked about FICA rates in the last chapter. So in this problem, what we're going to focus on is just calculating the federal income tax for each one of these employees. So there's some important information that you need to know about each one of these employees before we can calculate the federal income tax properly. First of all, you have to know their filing status. You would also need to know the amount of their gross wages or salaries for that period of time and the period of time that they are working with as far as salaries are concerned. The period of time can be weekly, bi-weekly, semi-monthly, or monthly. These are some common types of payment periods for our employees that we are paying. But in the case of Lewis S., he was weekly. And they want us to figure out what the percentage method would be first. And so to learn how to calculate the percentage method, we have to go to our percentage method tables. And so I'm going to click right here on this link to pull up our tables. And it actually pulls up all the tables. But what you're going to do is you're going to look for the percentage table. And because this employee was paid weekly, we're going to use the weekly table. And I'm going to enlarge this table so you can see what we're doing. All right, so we're using the percentage method. It's going to be weekly. We have to know their marital status. And our problem told us that this employee was single. So you're going to go to the single table down here. And you're going to look for the wages that fall between at least, but less than. In this first employee that we're looking at, the amount of wages was $1,040. $1,040 falls in between $428 and it falls in between $1,010 and $1,883. The amount again of the salary was $1,040. So $1,040 is above $1,110, but still below $1,883. So the next column has to do with the tentative amount of tax that they've already calculated for you. And so the tables have already calculated the amount up to $1,110, and they gave you this amount. That's not all of the federal income tax. You've got to figure out the amount of tax that would be taxed at the 22% tax rate. Notice on your table that the tax rates are changing depending on the amount of money that an employee earns. And since we are falling in the category of from 1,110 to 1,883, our percentage is going to be 22%. So if I were you, I would write this down. And what I would like for you to write down is the salary that was given in Cengage for the first employee, which was 1,040. I would like for you to subtract from that 1,040 the amount of $1,1010. This amount right here is going to be subtracted from your wages because they've already figured the tax on this amount. The tax on this amount is $88.84. So we're going to find the difference between the amount of the adjusted wage that it exceeds, the difference between the salary and this amount, which will give you $30. And then we're going to multiply it by 22% to give you the portion of tax that they have not figured. And then we're going to add that amount back to the amount that was given for the taxes that were figured on 1,110. And so students find this difficult. So what I've done is I've created an Excel spreadsheet to show you how they calculate the taxes on each one of these employees. And so I will see if I can share that with you. Okay, you should be able to see this, but I'm not sure if you can or not. So for a second, I'm going to go to a new share and let me see if I can pick that up. Yeah, here we go. Now you should be able to see the Excel spreadsheet that I created. Our first employee was S. Lewis, and he had a filing status of single, and his wage was 1,040, and it was weekly. Here's how you would make the computations for the percentage method. You take his salary, which was given, you subtract the amount of that the adjusted wage exceeds, which was from the table that we just looked at. That amount was 1,010. Remember, 1,040 fell in between 1,010 and another figure that they gave you on the table. So you have to figure out where this comes from on the table. And so I'm going to do a new share with you and go back to our tables so you can see exactly where that amount came from. Here is your 1,010 that you would subtract. That's where the amount comes from. So I'm going to do a new share and I'm going to go back to the Excel spreadsheet so you can look at it again. That 1,010 came straight from the table. We subtract that from the salary, that leaves us with $30, which is an excess amount of salary over the amount of the adjusted wage. And that leaves you with $30 that we would multiply by the tax rate, which also comes from the table. In this case, the employee's tax rate was 22%. So again, I'm going to show you where we got that 22%. And the 22% is right here. All right, and so you should be able to see the Excel spreadsheet that I prepared. That 22% that came from the table is multiplied by $30. That was the difference between the salary and the adjusted wage. When you multiply 30 times 22%, it gives you the partial tax that we had to figure, which was $6.60. Then we're going to add the tentative amount to withhold back to that. And this also comes from the table. Again, I'm going to go back to my tables and show you where this $88.84 comes from. And it's right here. That's where we get the amount. So back to the Excel spreadsheet that I made, the total federal tax is $6.60 plus $88.84. So for the percentage method, you would put that into Cengage as $95.44. And so I'm going to go back to Cengage for just a moment so you'll see where we enter that in. And for the percentage method, you should enter in $95.44. That was the total tax for the percentage method. The other method that they're asking for is the wage bracket method. So to calculate the wage bracket method, we could go to those same tables. Remember, on the wage bracket method, it's a different table. It would be table B. And you have to keep in mind that this was a weekly salary. This person was single. In order to calculate the correct amount of federal tax using the wage bracket method. So I'm going to go back to my tables. I'm going to get off of the percentage table and I'm going to move to my wage bracket table. And this person was paid weekly and was a single person. So I need to make sure that I get in the right category for this. I'm going to enlarge this so you can see it a little bit better. You see here, they've got a place for married filing jointly, head of household. If you just scroll over, you'll come to single or married in the third column here. But before we can do that, we've got to find out where our wages fit. It's got to be at least a certain amount, but less than another amount. So your salary has to fall in between these two. So for weekly salaries, if I scroll down to the bottom of this first column, it's not enough. In other words, our weekly salary was $1,040. This goes from $750 to $760. So I'm going to scroll over. and I'm going to scroll up, and I'm going to find something that's close to 1,040. And I can see two things that have 1,040 on them. I'm going to go to the lowest figure here because we want to pick up the most amount of taxes that it could be. So we want to be sure that we've taken out enough taxes on them. It's better to have more than less. So it falls in between 1,040 and 1,050. Remember, we were single. So on this table, we've got to scroll all the way over. And this is where it gets a little tricky. You got to scroll over. You're on this line right here. Scroll over to where it says single. And thank heavens it's the standard withholding. And unfortunately, it's hard to figure out where that is. Scrolling back and forth like this. So I'll do the best I can with you. 1,060 right here. It's below this little line right here. So I'm going to keep going across. And I'm going to go to 101 is the standard withholding for the single person. So $101 is what we're going to use as our federal income tax. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to put that $101 in the wage bracket method, and I'm going to check my work. Okay, so obviously I picked up the wrong thing. So let me try this again. We are weekly. We are going to be paid from, okay, the amount was 1,040. So it's the second from the top here. Obviously, I picked up the wrong one there. So let's see if I can. No, still won't work good there. Okay, it's 1,040. This one right here. You got to follow this across to single and withholding. And it was this one at 1,050. And single and withholding $96. 96 is the amount that you would pick up here. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to pick up 96. And I'm going to check my work, and that's correct this time. So be careful when you're working on these, because that one was hard to see on the table, but just make sure you are on the wage bracket method, single, weekly, salary, and that will give you the correct answer there. All right, let's try another one of these. The next person is Hanks, and they want you to do the percentage method first. He too is paid weekly, a salary of 1,910. He too is single. So we're going to go to our tables. I'm going to scroll back up to table A. We're on the percentage method, weekly. And what we have to do is find where our wages failed for this second employee. The second employee's salary was $1,910. So I'm going to go to, first of all, I got to figure out his marital status, which is single. I'm going to go to this table right here for single and or married filing separately. And what I would do is I would go and look for where my salary falls between these two amounts here. And I'm going to enlarge it so we can see it good. We're under single. We've fallen in between the amounts of 1883 and 3,379. Your salary falls in between those, so this is the line that we would use. The tentative amount to withhold is $280.90. They're at a 24% tax bracket, and the amount that is above the adjusted wage that it exceeds is $1,883. So they've calculated the taxes on $1,883, and the amount of tax on that is $280.90. They gave you that. So what we have to do is we have to take this amount from our salary. Whatever's left over, we would multiply it by 24%, and then we would add back the amount of tax that they gave to us. So I'm going to go to my Excel spreadsheet. We're looking at Hank's down here, and this is how I made the calculations. The salary amount was given. We got to subtract the amount that the adjusted wage exceeds, which came from the table. The difference is $27. Multiply it by the 24% tax rate on the table, and that gives you a partial tax. Then we're going to add back the tentative amount to withhold, which was what they gave you on the table. Again, this came from the table. And when you combine the amount that was given on the table plus the amount that you figured, it will give you $287.38. Uh-oh, I goofed then. So hold tight with me till I can get it back up again. Gotta love this live stuff here. So sorry, class. And we were working on Hank's, and the amount that we came up with from the Excel spreadsheet that I prepared was 287.38. Then, in order to calculate the wage bracket method, we have to use the wage bracket tables. You're going to find the wage bracket tables, which is table B. I'm going to enlarge those because this person was paid weekly. make sure you pick up weekly. He was paid an amount of $1,910. So it's more than 750. So we got to scroll over to see where that falls. It's 1,910. All right, so it's not on the first page of the tables at all. So I'm going to close this out. I'm going to scroll back down to the next page. I'm going to enlarge it so you can see where I am. We're still weekly, but we're on the second page of the weekly table. And you're going to look for the amount of 1,910. And right here is 1,910. 1,910 falls in between these two amounts. You always want to go to your higher because you see it's there too, but you want to take out more taxes. So skip down to the next line. It's 1,910, and this person is single. So we need to go to the single portion of this table. And you see there that this is single. And that 1,910, which was right here, is followed all the way across to 289. And so I'm going to pick up 289. And I'm going to check my work for that. So the rest of these are done in a similar manner. Just be careful because this one is bi-weekly. So you need to make sure you're on the bi-weekly tables. This one is semi-monthly, so make sure you're on the semi-monthly table. And this one is monthly, so make sure you're on the monthly table. And that's all there is to this problem. So I'm going to stop here, but I'm going to tell you that I'm going to post the Excel spreadsheet so you'll have it, which is handy for calculating the percentage method. And the rest is just the same as what we've done. So we'll stop sharing my screen with you. And I'm going to stop the recording, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.